one of the key budget bills enacted every 2 years, finances executive and administrative agencies, funds support services for veterans, and ensures election integrity and transparency. It is a wide-ranging bill that impacts all Minnesotans, and joining me in the studio is the chair of the Senate State Government and Elections Committee, Senator Mary Kiffmeyer. Thank you for being here.
Good to be with you today, Shannon.
Even though this is not an election year, the topic of election integrity is a hot topic. It's an issue of great importance to you because you served as Minnesota's Secretary of State. What has been done in this bill this year that will enhance the security of our election system, especially when it comes to the ballot drop boxes?
Well, in regards to those, which are brand new, matter of fact, nationally brand new, just kind of a wave that came upon us, we've added some security, monitoring, cameras. There's more that needs to be done, though, and I tried to get some of it done in this bill, but in the conversation with Secretary of State, that's all the farther he was willing to go. And then his pledge, though, was to continue to work for next session to do some more. So I'm counting on that and looking forward to do some more. But we're grateful for the measures we do have and some of the security that we have there. There are a few other things, too, that were done that I thought were helpful. But you remember, in Minnesota, our current laws are really fairly strong. But the biggest thing is we're strongest in the counting of the ballots. The question is getting them in the ballot box is where we need to put a little bit more integrity and security around that. And my biggest motivation for that, if people do not have confidence in the system, and I mean all the people, have confidence in the system, then they are less desirous of participating. And you see that in many areas of life. So that's what really motivates me, is to help make sure that all the people have that confidence.
As I mentioned in my introduction, this bill also funds veterans and military affairs. And the support services is one of those expansions or enhancements this year. There's going to be the development of Montevideo, Bemidji, and Preston veterans homes. Is the state well positioned to handle the continued demand for veteran services, especially as the baby boomers age?
Well, absolutely. It's definitely a concern. And I would say that because we have these 3 homes approved in 1 year, which is really quite amazing, quite amazing. So those 3 homes are not only approved federally in the money to do that work, which is very, very important, but also we were able to put in my bill the maintenance requirement, which is required by federal rules, by federal law. So we were able to accomplish both, to take that federal money. And with 3 new homes, especially the first one up in Bemidji, that's up in the northwest corner, first time. Another one in the western side of Minnesota. So those are 3 very welcome locations. So I think as far as we can know right now, I think that's going to really be helpful in preparing us for that boomer of veterans.
We spoke about this once before, and now it's a reality, a legislative commission on cybersecurity. You've often spoken about the importance of transparency, but when it comes to cybersecurity, some of the tactics, the things that the legislature may do to protect itself must be secret. We don't want the hackers to know what we're planning to do to keep our information intact. So where's the balance there? Talk a little bit about that.
I think that's why we approved and the governor signed into law that Cybersecurity Commission, because it gives a limited number of legislators. And then it gives them the power and the authority to go into a private session where then the IT staff can tell them the inside information that they need to know to feel that we are doing what is necessary for cybersecurity. So this is the first time, to do that. But transparency is that they are meeting. Transparency is that it's got to be for those details in secret. But otherwise, as far as the general public, to at least know that legislators through this commission, bicamerally, House and Senate together, are looking out for their interests and making sure that the data is secure.
Twice a year, people like me groan and complain about the change in the time. And in this bill, there's a provision to eliminate daylight saving time if the federal government will allow it. So what does the federal government need to do? How is Minnesota positioning itself for this?
Well, the federal government introduced, I think senators from Florida introduced it in the 2018 session. And since then, 19 states, including Minnesota, have passed resolutions or laws that say if the feds do allow it, and then we can, as a state, it will be automatic. It triggers after the first flip, whenever that flip happens, to daylight saving time, then we will stay on it. No more flipping. And it's very unhealthy. Car accidents, strokes, heart attacks, babies, mothers, and senior citizens, and all kinds of people. Statistics show it is very unhealthy to have this flipping. But overwhelmingly, Minnesotans, after I introduced this about 2 years ago, it was quite a heated debate, I want to tell you. I opened up one email. Matter of fact, most of them, a large number, were for let's keep daylight saving time. That evening light is more precious to Minnesotans. They kind of hate losing, but yes, they would rather have it in the evening. Overwhelmingly supported the daylight saving all year round.
The final bill requests that the legislative auditor conduct an audit of the state's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It does read as a request, though, not a mandate. And Jim Nobles, our legislative auditor, did tell Minnesota Public Radio that the scope of that request is much too large and would take away from other projects that their auditing agency is doing. So is there a particular aspect of the state's response that you would like to see those auditors investigate?
Well, there are, only in the sense that I think we can have a great deal of trust in Mr. Nobles. He has a lot of trust. But I also told the Associated Press when they first interviewed me, this is going to be dependent upon Mr. Nobles' judgment of all of his resources. And the bill hadn't been passed and signed into law yet. So he's going to have to do that. So we're in line with that. But Mr. Nobles, as an auditor, would prefer to wait until there are problems that arise or questions that arise, and then zero in. So he said if something is running along and do an audit there, that doesn't quite have the same benefit to the taxpayers. And so he usually says, let's let this go for a little while, see where maybe some of the weak spots are. He might do some random audits. I think I'm on the Legislative Audit Commission, and I also chair the topic selection. So I think there's going to be some areas we're going to go to. But remember, we've gotten 2 full tranches, as they call them, of federal money, CARES Act 1 and 2, and now we have the ARPA, and that is a third bunch of money. So it isn't even all spent yet, committed to. There's still lots of questions to be held. So waiting a little while is just fine. I know Mr. Nobles would do a good job when he does it.
It's recently come to light that Representative John Thompson carries a Wisconsin driver's license, calling into question whether he lives in his legislative district. Is a law change necessary, or does the Secretary of State need to do a different set of practices to ensure that a candidate lives in the place that they seek to represent?
Definitely something needs to happen. The concern I have when you talked about transparency before, this is where transparency is really, really important. I'm not convinced, even now that I've seen what's happened here and taking a look at this law, that we should even allow elected representatives to hide their address, where they live. To me, that's a public right to know. They should know that their person they're voting for lives in the district that they're wanting to represent. That's real basic 101 kind of thing to me. So I don't know if maybe Ms. Time is maybe no longer good to do that. Could the Secretary of State do more? But in the letter that I received from that, how far should they go? Investigate their home? Should they do a background check? I mean, it's almost unlimited is what you might do. But the real responsibility about who lives in the district belongs to the candidate. The candidate is responsible, and the candidate needs to be the one who proves that they're eligible because they live in that district. So it may be a law that as time has come to end it. At the same time, in the concerns that I've heard from others about security threats myself, you know. So, but I live out in the country on a long road. If you can get through the snow in the winter, have at it. But we passed a law, signed into law, that they can use $3,000 of their campaign account categorized under non-campaign expenditures for security, ID protection, credit card monitoring, and security like these cameras and different things that you have in your home, that they can do that. I think that is more valuable to the legislators. But I'm going to hold hearings. I've got a bill being drafted right now. I'm going to hold hearings on it, see what the people have to say, and go from there.
Senator Mary Kiffmeyer, it's so good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you too, Shannon. Thank you.